You are listening to the Prosper at Law podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper at Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here with another edition of the Prosper at Law podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to talk about something that is, in terms of a law firm or actually a solo law practice. So the title today is, what are you? Are you a minder, a grinder, or a finder? And I'll explain that a little bit. You may have heard that term. I'm not sure who coined it. But as you know, the Prosper at Law podcast is designed to help primarily criminal defense lawyers learn how to do things that they can implement to grow their practices and ultimately get to where you actually own a business. And one of the ways a business has been described to me is you have a business if you can leave it for 30 days. Think about that. So you own a law firm business if you can calendar a trip, or you could stay home. You could have a staycation, or you could go write a book, or you could do something else. But you'll know you have a business if you can calendar being away for 30 days, and a couple of things have to happen. One, you have to not call in to check on things. The people that run your business, your team, your employees, your staff, whatever you call them, have the knowledge and capability and systems and problem-solving ability and care enough to do what they do without you looking over their shoulder, and they would not contact you unless there was some kind of emergency, a real emergency, like your office building burned down or something else, which I don't know what it would be, but that's a business. And if you think about businesses that we go to, when you go, past a McDonald's or you go past a Starbucks or a tire store, a Firestone or something like that, a Sam's Club, it could be anything, that the people that own that business, especially if it's privately held, like a McDonald's franchise or Chick-fil-A franchise or something like that, you don't really expect the owner to be in there. So you accept it in that way, that the owner's not there, and you know this. You go in a department store, you're not looking for the owner. That's a business. The owner is somewhere else, doing something else, but the business runs. With a law firm and other professional services, it is different, and the way you think about it is justified because it is different. Because if you're an accountant, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, then you really start out as being a highly paid hourly employee. If you're a medical doctor, you're practicing medicine. It doesn't happen without you. The nurses and the techs at the hospital or in the doctor's office, they can't do it for you. As an accountant, the same thing. The accountant is doing the work. As a lawyer, you start off with that mindset, and it's perfectly normal because you have to be there doing the work. That's what you signed up for. So it is a little bit of a leap, but mentally, because if you think, well, I'm a lawyer, I wanted to be a lawyer, I'm here to practice law, that's what I do. And that's fine. That's the way it starts out. That's the way it starts out for everybody and ends up for most people. It certainly started out that way for me. Over time, however, it gets to be a grind where you cannot ever step away from it. You can never get any time off. For me, I know that it got to where I really hardly could take a vacation because my court calendar filled up. And if I didn't plan ahead and work really hard to get an order of protection, and that's a hassle, honestly, because I practiced in all these levels of courts, and the first thing that would happen is I'd get an order of protection, and the judge would say something like, well, I'll protect you for this court in this county, but I'm not going to obligate the next county. I'm not going to protect you from the lower courts. And so then what it would look like is now I'm getting an order of protection in the federal district court of South Carolina. I'm getting an order of protection in the circuit court where I live in South Carolina, in the Myrtle Beach area. I'm asking the magistrate to sign an order. And then I'm thinking, do I need to go to every city court and get an order of protection? So it becomes such a hassle that it's easier just not to do it, just to work through it. And the other thing is, in order to do that, it took planning. Well, I was on such a hamster wheel, frantically going through it, that by the time I thought I was going to go somewhere, then I hadn't pre-planned it. I didn't have time to pre-plan it. I was going from task to task. And this, sadly, this snowballs, over the course of your career. It did over the course of my career. And it leads to burnout, exhaustion, mental fatigue, and all of these things. So if you've been practicing as a solo, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the original question then is, are you a minder, or a grinder, or a finder? And I don't know who coined that, but I'll start with a grinder. The grinder is the person who's doing the work. They're the lawyer, being a lawyer, working on cases and matters and doing the work. That's the grinder. The minder is the person who is managing the office manager or the managing partner in a larger firm. That's the minder. That's the person that's making sure people get a paycheck, making sure that the clients paid the law firm, making sure that people come to work and do their job, answering questions. There can be an endless number of questions about this. When are we taking off the 4th of July, which is on a Thursday this year? Are we closed on Friday? Answering all these questions. Somebody's birthday is coming up, so what do you want to do for their birthday? That's the minder. And then the finder is the person that brings in the cases. That's the person who's the rainmaker, the finder. So if you're a solo practitioner, you're doing all three. You're the grinder, you're the minder, and you're the finder. And each one of those roles is something that you can do as much with it or as little with it as you want to. Now, in a larger firm, I'd call them chandelier firms, the big defense firms, mostly insurance defense, represent businesses and that sort of thing. We all know what the larger firms look like and what they are. And the large firms, usually the partners, the people that have worked there more than 7 years typically, and maybe they've worked there a decade or two, they're people who have relationships with either government entities or they have a large client base for business formation, business litigation, and they're the person that people in the community know and go to, so that they support that law firm, that large law firm, as a partner, and there may be maybe 20 partners or maybe 100 partners. They're people that are partners because they bring in, for their sector, they bring in business. Now, the larger firms, which are far more advanced in some ways than the small law firms and certainly the solos, typically you'll always know they have a managing partner. And so even some of the firms that I've known where they only had 6 or 7 people, but even at that level, they had a managing partner. And the managing partner in the large law firms typically doesn't even have a caseload. They don't do any casework. And you'll see large firms where somebody will step into the managing partner role. They'll do it for a set term, maybe of a few years, maybe longer. And then they'll go back into practicing law, and someone else will come in to be the managing partner and deal with all of the headaches and things that you have to deal with in running a law firm business. And then you have the grinders. These are the associates that many times are hired out of law school. They're put on a really heavy work track where they're required to bill 2,000, 2,200 hours or more each year. And so they're just grinding, hitting their billable hour time, hoping to one day become a partner. And you'll see this where, certainly I've seen it, where the lawyers go to the firm and after 7 years or 8 years, I think it's 7 usually, at least around here, where you expect to be made partner. And if you're not made a partner in that period of time, you're not going to be a partner. And the reason you're not going to be a partner is because you're not a finder. You're not bringing in business. So there's no reason for you to be a partner in that law firm if you're not bringing in business. And so then you see those people most of the time leave the firm. They've got a pipeline of other people they're bringing in. The other situation you'll see is where somebody has their own law practice or law firm. They have a following, and they'll bring those people in because those people have a book of business, those people have a following. This person is going to bring in X number of dollars a year, and they know that because the person's been doing that over a significant period of time. Sometimes you'll see it where somebody has a special relationship with somebody, with a group. They have a couple, for like a friend of mine has a very successful kind of medical collection type of law practice, and he had a relationship with the hospital. So they bring him and make him a partner right away because he's got the client at this hospital and another hospital, and that business is going to come in regularly. So he can be a partner because he brings that. For everybody else, it's very challenging, and it's one of the things that keeps you from growing, because if you're doing all three, if you're the grinder and you're the minder and you're the finder, then something is going to suffer. And as a lawyer, you took an oath to defend people diligently, represent people diligently. So you don't want to let that suffer. That's your oath, that's your purpose, that's the pride you take in what you do. So you're probably going to go more toward doing the legal work and doing it as best as you can do it. Then the minding is usually just kind of happenstance, where you really don't have a plan. You struggle with that. And then the finder role suffers too, because you don't have time to sit around and think about what's our marketing plan going to be for the next 6 months? What's our marketing plan going to be 18 months from now? What are our plans for expansion? What new things do we need to do to bring in more clients? So I think that probably what happens there is the management gets neglected, the marketing gets neglected, the work is being done and probably done well, and so that's just a stagnant law practice. It's one of the reasons a lot of law firms, solos, a lot of solo lawyers, I shouldn't call it a law firm because in my mind it isn't, according to the the bar regulations. It isn't either. It's actually an ethical violation in South Carolina to call yourself a law firm if you're a solo. However, almost everybody does it and nobody gets turned in, and so it's illegal but fine. But if you're a solo and you don't have time to do these things, then it was explained to me when I first started coaching that you have about as much blood and sweat in your body to produce about $250,000 a year, and that's kind of a marker. The numbers I see are really usually maybe even lower than that, but if you have enough sweat in your body and you have enough energy and will, then so you gross 250. If you have a good year, maybe you're 280, maybe 300, and your overhead is about 50% or whatever. So you make 250. Your take-home pay is 120. You're able to have an owner's benefit because you own the business, and so there are more expenses that are business related, that are things that you have. So it's not a bad life, depending on where you live and what the standard of living is. So you get there and you're proud and happy, and you're a lawyer, and everybody thinks you're great because you're a lawyer. And so, but you're making about $120,000 a year, which is great, except that what happens is it doesn't change. It's great to make $120,000 when you're young and energetic and excited, but 15, 20 years later, it's not so great. And nothing changes as long as you stay in those three roles yourself. And it's not so easy to break out of that, because to change what you're doing and start to get traction and momentum takes thought, knowledge, and implementation. So just briefly also, you see situations where you have a small firm, it may have like 5 members, and each one is a finder, each one brings in money into the business. But I call those parallel practices, because they're really not a business in the sense that it has the structure of a business where somebody's responsible for the marketing, somebody's responsible for the sales, somebody else is responsible for keeping up with the numbers and the metrics. It's really more of this rainmaker who can bring in X number of dollars, and this rainmaker, she can bring in X number of dollars, and this one can bring in X number of dollars. And usually they have different practice areas they combine together to save on office space and equipment and phone systems. They're just basically sharing expenses. By my definition, that's not a law firm business. That's what I call a parallel practice, and it's important not to confuse that with a business where somebody can be away for 30 days. If you have one of those parallel practices, and many times they don't even share revenue, their revenue is their revenue, so it's the same as a solo. That person in that parallel practice, if he or she goes on vacation for 30 days, the expenses continue and the revenue stops because they're not doing the work, because they're the grinder. And that's the paradox. That's the problem of being a lawyer, also the problem of being a doctor, and all of these other areas where you're the professional. It's very limiting. One concept that I had, which I think a lot of people have, is that I thought when I expanded that I would go find somebody who had business, who had a practice, who had a book of business, and I would have them come and join my law firm, and my revenues would instantly go up because they brought in that much business a year. Like a good friend of mine who's a solo, he's a very good, talented criminal defense lawyer. He will bring in and consistently do about $500,000 a year. So I've thought before, well, he could come, we're really good friends, he could come join my law firm, and I know when he joins that those yearly revenues should go up by about $500,000 because that's what he does. We don't work together because our styles are way too different. We practice differently. and I know ahead of time it would never work. A good friend of mine, actually my roommate in law school, who's a very successful personal injury lawyer in Charleston, I had this conversation with him one time because I was trying to find people that I could hire who would bring in money, who would bring in business. And I asked him, I said, do any of your associates bring in business, or any of your associates finders, or any of your associates people that you know they're going to bring in a certain dollar amount every year? And he thought about it a minute, and he said, Greg, all of my associates that brought in business are all former associates. And so the people that he hired that were young and energetic and attractive to clients left because they didn't need the law firm to find clients for them, so they left. And so he's now got, and I think he's got 7 or 8 associates, and he brings in all the business and then spreads it out among them. And I finally reached the point where I realized that that's what I have to do. It's up to me to bring in the business. And it's been very interesting to me because I have some fine lawyers that have worked for me and fine lawyers that work for me right now, and they just don't attract business. You would think that they would, but they don't. And I've had some really good ones, and I hired one, or at least one, that was practicing, and I thought he had business, but he really didn't. And in talking to people that were met at a seminar, or people that, quote, knew what they were doing, many of them just looked me in the eye and said, listen, it's your job to bring in the business. It's your job to grow the business. It's your job to bring in the clients. And so just know that. If clients are coming in, it's because you have to attract them. And I've pretty much adopted that model, and I don't even really worry about it. And I try a little bit to get my lawyers to go out and socialize or do this or try to make connections. But it's really not their mindset. They're grinders. That's what they are. And I need grinders. Everybody needs grinders. And it seems like a bad term. It's minder, finder, and grinder because it rhymes, right? But I don't mean the grinder in a derogatory term, because it sounds derogatory, and maybe I should come up with a new term. But they're necessary, and they're crucial. They're essential. The clients rely on them. Our staff relies on them, and I rely on them. And so it's very important work. And they do good work, and I'm very proud of them. So don't think of that as a derogatory term, because I don't really mean it that way at all. And so at this point, in my law firm, what am I? Or what am I not? At this point, I'm not a grinder. I don't have any cases assigned. There are no cases assigned to Greg. Greg does not have a caseload. There's not a docket anywhere in this state that has Greg McCollum on it as the lawyer. And that's very intentional. I don't have any clients. I have a law firm where right now we're representing probably about 300 people a year, criminal defense only. There's DUIs in the mix, probably about 70 DUIs in a year. There's summary court, which is the misdemeanor magistrate court stuff, that's minor stuff. And then there are the major felonies, which are felonies but also serious felonies, where people are looking at some serious prison time if they don't do something and get good representation and get those cases worked out. And so that's it. So there, of the about 300 cases that we're signing right now, not one of those cases is mine. So I'm not a grinder. What I am is a finder. I'm the person who is supervising the marketing. I'm the person who's doing the marketing. I'm the person who is creating the content to market with. I'm the person who's creating all the things that we do. I'm the person doing it. Now, I don't do it myself because that's not efficient. Most of it I have outside vendors and people I have special relationships with, people that I've worked with for a long time, and they do it. I meet with them from time to time to supervise it. I'm constantly trying to come up with making a more robust marketing plan. I'm looking at moving into other geographic areas. Now, what I do some of in my role is minding. I have an office manager who does all the day-to-day things and hears the problems and brings issues to me, so that I'm filtered out of that day-to-day stuff. If somebody has an issue in my law firm, they're going to go, the paralegals are going to go to one of the lawyers. If it's more of a personnel type thing, they're going to go to Kelly, who's the office manager and the person who's in charge of all the bookkeeping and metrics and numbers that we keep up with. And only if they can't solve the issue do I ever even hear about it. I'll hear about it. I'll hear, here's 3 problems we solved this week, Greg. If you hear this happened, don't be concerned about it because it's resolved. They can't solve everything always, and sometimes they want reassurance, so they come to me, but not that often. And when they come to me in regularly scheduled meetings. So nobody comes to me during the day. I meet with Kelly 3 times a week from 2:30 to 3. I have a management meeting from 3 to 3:30 or 4 o'clock at the latest, and I have a sales meeting on Friday at 3 o'clock to usually, 3:30, 3:45. And that's where all this stuff comes to me. It doesn't come to me when I'm walking down the hall. It doesn't come to me when I'm in my office working. So even though I'm in the office part of the week, I'm free to do my job. So the minding part is not really that much. Maybe I'm probably 80% finder and maybe 20% minder and 0% grinder. And that seems to be a pretty good formula, and I don't ever envision where I could see where I would not have any kind of the minder role. I mean, it's my law firm. I'm the so-called CEO of it, so I always have to have some role in that. Even if I have other people that are solving problems, I still want to know what's going on, be measuring our success, measuring what we're doing. And so that's the role. So in this is the thing I would like for you to think about. What are you? Are you a minder? Are you a finder? Are you a grinder? And also think about, what do you want to be? I know some, multi-7-figure lawyers, probably maybe even 8-figure lawyers. They're still grinders. They still do it. They love it. They can't stop doing it. They don't want to stop doing it. And they're able to put other people in these roles, so they're still able to be sort of the CEO of the law firm, but also represent clients because they love doing it. So you don't have to stop representing clients, but you have to come up with a plan and a way to solve these other issues. If you don't, then just plan to be stuck. Plan for the stress and the no free time and limited money. Just expect that to continue. If you want to change that, you have to start doing something. You have to learn, you have to grow, you have to implement something to become more, if that's what you want to do. So thank you for listening. Greg McCollum here with another edition of the Prosper at Law podcast. If you have any questions or think you would like to work with us, go on over to our website. It's prosperatlaw.com. That's coaching for criminal defense lawyers and family court and divorce lawyers. See you next time. If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.